I'm going to answer this question by saying Shedeur Sanders. And I'm going to tell you why. I think he's being set up to fail. That's right, I'm going to say it.
Okay.
Here we are on national television, right? There's been 11 practices, if I remember correctly. He's been starting against he's been playing against the third unit. He's fourth on the depth chart. And then suddenly you throw him into the star lineup and he hasn't had any reps with the first team at all. Think about that. So you're just going to throw him to the wolves like that, huh? I mean, if he had first team snaps in practice, I don't say that. But he doesn't. And then all of a sudden he's starting tomorrow night. It's like you want him to fail. I'm not accusing the coaches of doing this. I'm not accusing the GM of doing this. But that owner, Mr. Haslam, that's a different animal right there. Mr. $230 million guaranteed deal to DeSean Watson. And then he going to come out this time around. I had nothing to do with this pick. I didn't have anything to do with it. I mean, that wasn't me. That was GM Berry. That wasn't me. The owner sitting up there. It wasn't me. Wasn't me. Yo.
That was Browns GM Andrew Berry with his thoughts on Shedeur Sanders as Damien Woody is back here with us on First Take. How confident are you that Shedeur is QB1 week 1 for the Browns?
I mean, listen, I guess over 50%. I mean, right now you're talking about between him and DeSean Watson. Hell, DeSean Watson hasn't been relevant since 2020. The only thing that's keeping DeSean Watson on that team is his contract. And so when you talk about those two, I would have to lean towards Shedeur Sanders. But listen, I think the biggest thing with the Cleveland Browns situation.
Let me tell you something. When Stephen A. Smith starts rattling off stats like a prosecutor reading charges, somebody's name is about to get dragged through the mud on national television. And this time, that name was Shedeur Sanders. On First Take, in front of millions of people, Stephen A. didn't sugarcoat a single word. He went line by line, number by number, and basically told the entire NFL world, this kid ain't it. But here's the thing that makes this moment so complicated, so layered, so messy. Stephen A. literally said, his daddy's like a brother to me. I love him to death. So was this tough love, or was this a public takedown dressed up in loyalty? That's exactly what we're unpacking today. Stay locked in.
He's done nothing wrong. So why are we having this conversation about his character? I'm going to tell you why. Because you got people hating on his daddy.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And they want any excuse that they can come up with. And let me remind America why Deion Sanders, we going to say this. This is why Deion Sanders is hated by some people. Because he was the greatest. And he told you so. And then went out there and showed you show. And you were helpless to do anything about it. And then when he talked about it, not only could you not play better than him, you couldn't talk better than him, you couldn't articulate your thoughts better than him, you didn't have that swag, that flavor about you, that vibe about you, you couldn't resonate with an audience and gravitate them towards you the way that he could. And Deion knew it, and you hated him for it. And so since you couldn't touch him, now you're trying to touch his son. This is low. The fact that this is a story, the fact that people are putting this stuff out there, I'm not blaming Josina Anderson, you or anybody else. I'm saying the fact that somebody would say this stuff is low. It's low. But that's all right, because this is 2025, and Deion Sanders got cover all day, every day. Right here with me, with him, and with any of us on any damn network who covers the NFL. We know who the hell Prime Time is. The brother's so Prime Time, it's sacrilegious to talk about him in the daytime. That's how big time Prime Time is. And now his son is coming, and they gonna use this as an excuse. Sorry asses, y'all make me sick.
Now look, I need you to understand the weight of what Stephen A. actually said on air. Because this wasn't a casual opinion. This wasn't, I think he needs to improve. No, Stephen A. came with a full receipts drop. 16.7 points per game in 7 starts, 29th out of 32 teams, a 59% completion rate, 26th among 30 qualifiers, 7 interceptions, worst interception percentage in the entire NFL, a 73 passer rating, 29th out of 30 qualifiers, a 36% success rate, again, 29th out of 30 qualifiers. And if that wasn't enough, under pressure, which was 51% of his dropbacks, a league high. Shedeur completed only 42% of his passes, threw 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and took 23 sacks. 23 sacks under pressure alone. Now, before you close this video and go to the comments to type, "That's the offensive line's fault," hold on, because Stephen A. actually said that too. He acknowledged the weapons problem. He acknowledged the offensive line disaster. He even acknowledged that you cannot fully evaluate a quarterback without giving him something to work with. But he still read those numbers like a verdict. And that's the part that has people talking. Because when you love somebody's father like a brother, and you still go on national television and say, the numbers don't say we should be confident, that hits different. That's not a stranger throwing stones. That's someone from inside the circle dropping a grenade. But here's where the conversation gets really real, because Damien Woody, who was also on that panel, made a point that cuts deeper than any stat line ever could. All 5 starting offensive linemen for the Cleveland Browns are free agents right now. Every single one of them. As in, Cleveland literally does not have a starting offensive line at this moment. Think about that for a second. You're asking a young quarterback, a rookie, to walk into a system where he was pressured on more than half of his dropbacks with a new offense, a new coaching staff, no receivers, a running back coming off an injury, in 0 offensive line continuity. And then you want to put his stat line on a big screen and say, see, he's not good enough. Woody didn't hold back either. He said it plain. They have no offense. Not a weak offense. Not a work-in-progress offense. No offense. Period. And the tight end is the only bright spot, but even that can only carry so much weight when a quarterback is literally running for his life on every other snap.
Traditional media is dying right before our eyes. If you do not have your own platform to stand on as a safety net, what are you really doing? Ladies and gentlemen, if you can't beat the program, join the program. Who am I to tell another person how they supposed to feel? So in some ways, I see where Michelle is coming from. She's hurt. I see where Carrie Champion coming from. She just holding certain people accountable. Now, being the top dog that he is, whether people want to accept it or not, Stephen A. Smith doesn't respond on First Take. He responds on his platform. That's content 101, ladies and gentlemen. Because whether you like him, love him, hate him, despise him, he's put on a masterclass of what to do with your own IP. Brands, networks, and entities do not want talent anymore. They want audiences. Anybody that is watching this need to understand, you need to create your own audience. That's the value now. This is the thing that Stephen A. has been showing everybody, and you can't knock it. You might as well try to join, because Stephen A. Smith Show is owned and operated by who?
Stephen A. Smith.
Okay, you signed a big boy deal with Sirius XM, the biggest radio. You have that. When you talk about leverage, but I even look at what happened with Shannon Sharp. Did he stop Nightcap? Did he stop Club Shay Shay? Why? You had your own IP. You can't cut me from 4th and 1, baby. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to hold what I really got to say.
And yet, despite all of that, both Woody and Stephen A. still said Shedeur is likely your Week 1 starter. Why? Because where else are they going? DeSean Watson hasn't been relevant since 2020. His entire presence on that roster is a $230 million guaranteed albatross that reset the market and changed how the entire league thinks about quarterback contracts. That one signing, that one moment of Haslam ownership desperation is the reason Cleveland is stuck in the mess they're in today. Now here's a layer of this story that didn't get nearly enough attention. Stephen A. made a distinction that matters a lot. He separated Andrew Berry from Omar Khan, and he was very intentional about it. His point was this: what happened in Cleveland isn't all on Berry. A lot of that damage was done at the ownership level. Jimmy Haslam went all in on DeSean Watson. That wasn't a GM decision. That was an owner swinging big and missing catastrophically. So when people want to come for Barry, Stephen A is essentially saying, pump the brakes, because the man inherited a dumpster fire with a $230 million anchor tied to it. Meanwhile, with Omar Khan in Pittsburgh, the Steelers have good ownership, clean structure, less interference. The comparison wasn't subtle. Cleveland's ownership has been getting in the way. Pittsburgh's hasn't. And that difference, that structural difference at the very top of an organization, is often the invisible wall that separates franchises that win from franchises that stay stuck. Stephen A also echoes something that Steve McNair said earlier in the program. They should have promoted Schwartz internally. And honestly, that point stings, because it speaks to a pattern in Cleveland where the right call keeps getting passed over for the flashy move, the big swing, the headline grab, and the players, specifically the quarterbacks, are the ones left holding the bag. And then Damien Woody said something that should make every Browns fan genuinely nervous. When talking about Maxx Crosby and the Raiders, Woody said, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Don't let this turn into Miles Sanders with the Cleveland Browns." That's a gut punch sentence, because what he's really saying is this: talented players on bad teams don't get to show the world what they are. They get buried, they get their numbers used against them, they get questioned, they get doubted, and by the time the team finally figures itself out, if it ever does, those players are either gone, broken, or forgotten. Shedeur Sanders is at that exact crossroads right now. He's got the talent, he's got the pedigree, he's got the work ethic. Cleveland's own GM said he grew tremendously from start 1 to start 7. But growth doesn't matter if the structure around you is collapsing. And right now, the structure in Cleveland is collapsing in real time on national television.
So let's come back to the original question. Was Stephen A being disrespectful, or was he being honest? Here's my take. Stephen A. Smith walks a very specific tightrope. He is not a stranger to Deion Sanders. He openly said that on air. His daddy's like a brother to me. That acknowledgement wasn't accidental. That was Stephen A. trying to say, I'm not doing this out of hate. I'm doing this because the truth matters more than comfort. But here's where it gets complicated. When you're that close to someone and you go on national TV and read a stat line that paints their son in the worst possible light, even with all the appropriate caveats about weapons and offensive lines and ownership failures, there are people watching who don't hear the caveats. They just hear the 73 passer rating. They just hear worst interception percentage in the NFL. They just hear Stephen A. saying he doesn't know how you can feel confident about Shedeur Sanders starting week 1. And that perception, that narrative, that sticks, especially for a young quarterback who's already fighting uphill. Was it disrespect? Probably not intentional. Was it damaging? Absolutely. Because in the NFL, perception is currency, and Stephen A. Smith just spent a lot of Shedeur's. Look, the bottom line is this. Shedeur Sanders is walking into one of the most broken situations in the entire NFL. Bad ownership, no offensive line, no weapons, a new system, and a national media machine that is already questioning whether he belongs before he's even had a full season to prove himself. But here's what I'll say about Shedeur. He showed growth. His own GM said it, and growth is the one thing stats can't always capture. The question isn't whether Shedeur has what it takes. The question is whether Cleveland will ever give him a fair chance to show it. If you want to see Shedeur succeed, and I genuinely do, then the pressure needs to go where it actually belongs. On Haslam, on the front office, on the people responsible for building what is, right now, one of the most talent-starved offenses in the entire league. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Is Cleveland setting Shedeur up to fail, or is this the kind of adversity that makes legends? Let me know. Like this video if you think he deserves better. Subscribe if you want real NFL conversation with no filter. We'll see you on the next one.